Right now, Tony Blinken is in Israel, meeting with Bibi Netanyahu. It remains to be seen what I don't know that there is, frankly, a Biden administration policy on Israel. I mean, of course there is, but it seems to be do nothing. And
hope it works out.
Yeah. And, give us a call sometime. Here is Palestinian journalist Said Arikat asking a State Department spokesperson what the designation the State Department gives Palestinians living in the West Bank and other settlements as the Israelis are gearing up for another assault, essentially, on Palestinian homes and trying to dispossess more Palestinians. Watch this exchange.
Status of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, including Jenin, including the camp of Jenin, and everywhere else in the West Bank. How do you designate them? What kind of designation you give the Palestinians in the West Bank?
That they reside in those territories.
Reside in that totally independent of the rest of the world, as if it were a different planet? Are they occupied, for instance? Do you subscribe to the fact that they are under military occupation?
Said,
it's a simple question. Are they under occupation?
Said, let me say a couple of things to the point that I believe.
Are they occupied or are they not occupied? What is the status that you give the Palestinians right at this moment? What kind of status do they have?
Said, the recent period has seen a sharp.
I'm not talking about a recent period. I am saying about legally. How do you designate the Palestinians in the West Bank? What is their status?
Said, I understand the question you're asking, and as we've said previously, it is vital for both sides to take action to prevent even greater loss, and we condemn any violence, escalation, or provocation. We have made quite clear, and I spoke to this in addressing Matt's question, that we believe Palestinians and Israelis equally deserve to live safely and securely.
Now, who guarantees that equality? Who will guarantee that Palestinians and Israelis can actually have the same equal measures, as you keep repeating? It's not the Palestinians that keep going day after day into Israeli villages and towns and so on and attack them during night raids, killing their people. You just basically recited the Israeli story that there are 9 militants killed and 1 civilian. As if you were sure of that fact, even before an investigation went on. Where should the Palestinians go for protection? I've asked this question many times in this room. How should the Palestinians be protected?
Said, we have been very clear, and we believe that there is an urgent need for all parties to de-escalate and to work together to improve the security situation in the West Bank.
Right, but
and just sort of stating over and over again that you've been very clear does not make it so. Well, although they have been clear to a degree, we know who they side with.
I'll tell you what I am not clear about is why there is a refusal, and I don't know if this is a backtrack, but it feels like it is. There is no dispute, at least internationally, at least in terms of the UN. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what other entity you use as an arbiter, but there is no dispute that these are occupied territories. They are occupied territories, and I don't even know what that's the point. Like, I don't know what the contrary theory is, and the idea that the United States would not have an official designation for people living under occupation, this just seems to me to be absurd, and they won't do it because they're, I guess, afraid of offending the sensibilities of the Israelis, or it's because the Israelis are, maybe there's some push to annex that territory or whatnot. But the bottom line is they are occupied civilians. That's it.
I mean, I think if that latter point that you make, that if there's a push to annex that area, which it's like, I mean, they're essentially doing it slowly by removing Palestinians from their homes and seizing them. The fact that the United States is choosing not to recognize that as an annexation and as an occupation first would be catastrophic. That's what this journalist is pleading for them to do, to just take a stand and reiterate the facts on the ground as they are. But he's very carefully reading off a paper, probably trying not to mess up any talks with Blinken and Netanyahu and this new far-right government. But this is the exact time that the United States has to stand against it.
I also think that the problem is that it is hard to square the U.S. Involvement in Ukraine with their lack of involvement with the occupation of Palestinians. Because because the obvious parallel is that Ukrainians living in areas with Russian occupation are living in occupied are living with occupation. I mean,
occupation becomes salient.
That's the problem, is that they now have like some type of benchmark as to what they do in one instance with one category of people, and they are afraid to have the Palestinians in the West Bank be recognized as being in that same category. Because then all of a sudden they have to account for why in this instance they do that, in that instance they do this. And that's what they're trying to avoid. But it's also
so far past that point, though. People are really starting to understand what this actually is, that this is apartheid and occupation. I mean, they're the last to know, or they're the last to know, but they're being purposefully.
It's a rearguard action.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. We've got a word from our sponsor, and then we'll be talking to Raymond Jackson. He's the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, representing about, I know, we'll ask him, but approximately 140 bus workers, bus repairers were on strike in Loudoun County, striking against a private entity that it does not seem to have a terribly good record in the way that they treat their workers, based upon how many strikes we've seen across the country against this one particular private entity that's, I guess, running public transportation, which in and of itself is a problem in my mind. But we'll get to that in just a moment.